The movie starts with Victor on a bicycle, pedaling down the street while musing about love and its power. It's the holidays, so Victor gets to work using firecrackers to assemble a Santa Claus figure. The figure sits with him during a show and a drink, keeping him company in his lonely apartment, before he takes it outside to crackle and light up the sky. He's been diagnosed with 2 types of fear: the fear of losing someone you love and the fear of falling, or being in love. It stems from losing his mother and not having control of who stays long enough in his life to be appreciated. The next point of view is Alina's. She's battling to hide her sadness and tears behind makeup, while her parents and Victor sit through an event, taking a memorable picture without her. When the show starts, both Victor and Alina are a no-show. Sophia finds Victor outside the restroom door and proves she's the blabbermouth her husband knows her to be. Victor and Alina leave, taking a walk to their destination. Victor wants to make a stop at his mom's apartment because he might have forgotten the lights on. He's been in and out of the apartment a handful of times. He tells Alina it's for upkeeping. It's been 2 years since his mother passed away, and both Victor and Alina have fond memories about her. They touch on the future and retirement, with Alina mentioning that she hopes Victor spends his later days with someone he loves. Roy, dressed as Santa Claus, stands outside an apartment door. He takes a swing from a flask as if he needs alcohol to keep him grounded, and then he knocks on the door, and Alina answers. Roy delivers her birthdaygram, as her birthday is the following day. The letter is from Victor, and it's a beautiful message that celebrates their friendship and proves he didn't forget her birthday. It makes Alina tear up and gush at Victor. Roy introduces himself when Alina asks, and soon they're all acquainted with Roy joining them for drinks. He initially didn't want to join, thinking to keep things professional, but both Victor and Alina prove to be persuasive people, and Roy decides what his superiors don't know won't harm him. Victor pays him for his services, and Roy reveals he's been laid off from the agency he worked for. Victor knows this already because Walter owns the agency, and Sophia had blabbled about it to Victor, stating the agency wasn't doing too well. Roy finds himself being interrogated by both Alina and Victor. He's receptive, revealing a handful about his background. He didn't grow up in one place, and moved around a lot with his mom. He used to live with his girlfriend, but she broke up with him, and he decided to still stick around. Roy decides he has no business drinking and becoming best buddies with them. He takes his leave against their protests, and on his walk home, he makes the mistake of counting his paycheck in the open. He's oblivious to a stranger taking note before stealthily going after him with a weapon. Meanwhile, Alina wants to head home as well. Victor would prefer she stay as it's late, but she refuses, and he offers to walk her home. Roy gets knocked out and then robbed while Victor takes Alina home. On his way back, Victor sees Roy out cold and helps him. Roy eventually stirs awake and opts to head home instead of being under Victor's care. He refuses to get both the hospital and the police involved. Victor insists that Roy should at least spend the night on bed rest, seeing that he's hurt, so Roy reluctantly agrees. Victor works at an animal shelter and has to go to work. He asks Roy to feel at home and help himself out with some food in the fridge. Roy promises he'll be out of his hair by morning. Victor checks in on all the animals at the shelter, exuding passion and care. Victor gets a call while he's at his own apartment. The caller breaks bad news to him, seemingly about a life lost. Victor breaks down crying, but eventually gets out of bed because he's got work to attend to. He mentioned to the caller he would need to head over to the other apartment and pick up some things. He anchors himself with his mother's framed picture in the hallway, then takes a solemn shower. Roy is still in his mother's apartment and fast asleep when Victor gets there. Victor tells Alina about what's happened with Roy, and she infers he could be dangerous since he refused to get the police involved or go to the hospital. Victor feels Alina is reading too deep meaning and is willing to give Roy time to collect himself. Alina wants Victor to come to her fashion exhibition, but Victor has a habit of putting work first. He explains work keeps him busy, leaving no room for depression. Alina nods in understanding. She also teases Victor for hosting a possible predator. No matter how busy Victor is, he makes time to take in the beauty of the holidays. He enjoys watching the Christmas lights and has watched them every year since he was young. Roy is still recuperating in Victor's mother's apartment. Victor confirms he's been on bed rest for 2 days. Roy expresses gratitude for Victor's help, and Victor is willing to offer more, but Roy politely declines. He, however, complains that he still feels some aches here and there. Victor has caught on that Roy is homeless, something Roy revealed in his sleep. But Victor hasn't figured out why he didn't want help from a hospital or the police. Roy divulges that he's an illegal immigrant. His visa expired months ago, but nothing is waiting for him back home. Victor extends his hospitality. Over dinner, Roy tells him he doesn't have a family to return to. His mom is late and his father is absent. It was him and his girlfriend against the world until they decided to part ways. They had different views. He wanted to marry her, and she wanted to be free. He got evicted from the house they shared after learning his ex wasn't keeping to her share of the rent. Roy cuts Victor short when he mentions possibly doing more than he's already done. Roy doesn't want to be treated like a charity case, but Victor insists he's only expressing humanity. He convinces Roy to stay a couple more days and feel welcome until they can sort out a better alternative. Roy is inquisitive about Victor and Alina, so Victor clarifies that Alina is just a friend. They tried being more than friends once, but their friendship was more dynamic. Roy is still reluctant to get comfortable in Victor's place, but Victor promises it's no big deal. He reminds Roy the streets are dangerous, and he's also willing to make a few calls so Roy can get set up somewhere. Roy wants to repay Victor for his kindness, and offers to either clean the apartment or run errands for Victor. Victor appreciates the offer, but would prefer Roy just take his hospitality as goodwill. Victor keeps replaying everything that concerns Roy in his head, even as he decorates his apartment with a Christmas tree and dazzling lights. Victor comes back from work and finds Roy has cleaned and made them a meal. They both have something to say, and Victor goes first. He proposes Roy can become a citizen through a legal union. Roy doesn't swing that way, and Victor apologizes for the wild idea. Visibly upset, Roy abandons his food, needing his space. Victor calls out to him, but Roy doesn't stop to listen. While Roy is off, Victor berates himself for upsetting his guest. Roy, in his Santa Claus suit, wanders off in the early hours of the morning. By evening, Victor is out looking for him. And just when he retires back to the apartment, seemingly having given up, he finds Roy sitting by the doorstep with a weary smile. Victor crouches and steadily holds his gaze, returning the smile. Soon, they're dressed in suits and waiting to see if their civil union request will be approved. Roy is nervous, so Victor takes his hand, which calms him down. The officiant relays they meet all the requirements and their request has been approved. Neither parties have any objections as to why the ceremony should not be held. Victor confirms to the union, but Roy hesitates for a second before confirming. They exchange rings and sign the required documents. The officiant congratulates them on their union and permits them to seal said union with a kiss. Once again, there's hesitation before they give in, like strangers still trying to find their footing. The newlyweds return to Victor's place, and Roy feels they should celebrate their milestone. While Victor doesn't have a bottle of champagne, Roy has a substitute, whiskey. They toast and have a light banter about who should take whose last name. On a more serious note, Roy appreciates the lengths Victor has gone for him, as he's just a stranger Victor came across only days ago. It's Christmas Eve and Roy wants to make it special. He takes Victor in his arms and they start to slow dance. The mood intensifies as they both hold each other's gaze. Victor tries to pull away, but Roy pulls him back and kisses him. They pull apart briefly, as if unsure of what has just transpired, then connect again more fiercely and passionately. None of them have walked this path before, leaving them unsure of how to proceed. Victor feels they should call it a night, but Roy states a little more celebration can't hurt. Victor points out that they've had plenty to drink already, and he has work in the morning. Victor concedes but wants them to share a bed. It only makes sense that they do, seeing they're married. Victor is hesitant, hoping he isn't forcing Roy into anything he's uncomfortable with. He's fallen for Roy, and Roy admits he's aware. They're still not sure how to proceed, but somehow it comes naturally and easily to them. Gravitation, the kisses, and the way their bodies move together without needing to think, like instinct taking over. By morning, Victor is elated waking up in a lover's arms, but Roy doesn't share the same sentiments. Roy doesn't want Victor to get the wrong message. He feels indebted to Victor, and that's why he went through with the intimacy. He can't say for sure if they'll be the lovers Victor expects. Victor puts on a brave face and peels himself off Roy, excusing himself to go have a bath. Left alone, Roy thinks about the way forward and decides there's more to address. He finds Victor in the bath and joins him there. Roy apologizes and Victor waves him off, but Roy insists he's still trying to adjust, and Victor asserts that he understands. They make a pact to keep their friendship intact no matter the circumstance. Victor wants to take it a step further. He opens up about his fear, stemming from when he first lost his mom, losing also the ability to say goodbye. He wants them to take care of each other, and should Roy ever leave, Victor wants assurance that he's still somehow around and watching like a guardian angel. Roy promises but prefers they focus on what they have now, and Victor agrees. Victor is supposed to go see his father in his office, and Roy agrees to tag along. First, they go about breakfast. Roy is a good cook and teaches Victor a few techniques. Roy picks up on Victor's nervousness and opts to wait in the car while Victor confronts his father, alone. He assures Victor that everything will be fine, and he'll be seated and waiting for Victor to return. The The conversation with Victor's father starts with him asking about Victor's love life. Victor stammers and beats around the bush, but the father keeps pushing, knowing there must be some sort of lead, especially with Alina. Victor first mentions Roy as a friend, but his father is more interested in him settling down with a nice girl he can start a family with. Victor finally comes out with it, and his father doesn't take the news well. The father is appalled and dismissive. Victor gets angry as well, seeing that his father has rejected him. When he goes back to the car, Roy is seated and waiting as promised. All Victor can say is that things took a turn for the worse. Roy mentions he has a spot where he goes to distress and he can take Victor there. It's the park, and the couple sit on a bench and discuss properly. Roy feels bad about the tension brewing between father and son, but Victor voices that his father has always been controlling and unbearable, and it was only a matter of time before they both reached the edge. Roy teases he's a homewrecker, but offers to play peacemaker if possible. He learns that Victor works for his dad, helping him co-manage different assets and ventures. Alina is one of the ventures, but Victor's true joy is attending to the animals in the shelter. Roy is full of teases and likens himself to a rescue, asking if he brings joy to Victor. Roy wants to talk more about Alina, and it makes Victor remember he has a dinner to attend with her. Roy will join him. Alina's house is adorned with festive decorations. As her guests arrive, she greets them with a warm and cheerful Merry Christmas. Over dinner, Victor catches her up to speed about the row he had with his father. Alina assures him he's doing well, and he can pay his father no mind. She hands Victor a gift, and Roy is surprised that she has one for him too. Victor explains that he and Alina are big fans of the holidays with goals to always make it special. Victor hands Alina her present, but he's gotten something for Roy too. Roy opens it and finds keys to Victor's apartment. He wants to decline the gesture, which between you and me makes no sense. They're married! Alina urges Roy to open her gift to him, and the tears unravel together with the wrapping paper. Roy admits that growing up the holidays were lonely because his mom had to work. Victor comforts him, stating things are different now. Victor asks to use the bathroom and Alina directs him. While he's gone, Victor asks Alina for a favor. He needs her to help Roy find a spot in the gallery, as he's still out of work. When Roy returns, Alina brings up needing an extra hand at the gallery, and Roy is grateful for the offer, even though the pay isn't much. Roy is to start his new job the following day, and Victor remarks the stars have been aligned in Roy's favor. They toast to the rest of their evening and a happy holiday. Alina hosts the exhibition, introducing the Escargot Fantasy Collection from Saks. She tells the audience that the collection will be on full display at the gallery during the week. Backstage, Roy compliments Alina on a wonderful performance. Alina thanks him for his contribution, and they hug. Roy then asks if Alina would like to go out for drinks, and Alina agrees. This doesn't look like it will end well. Roy and Alina step outside, the cool night air wrapping around them as they talk, their laughter light and easy. Drinks in hand, they lose track of time with the conversation flowing naturally. Slowly, without either of them noticing at first, the space between them begins to get smaller. Then it happens. The subtle tilt of their heads, the way they're pulled toward each other, and before they know it, their lips meet in a kiss that feels both spontaneous and inevitable. They get a good taste of each other's lips, even smiling softly after the kiss, as if unaware of the line they've just crossed. The next scene depicts Alina, Roy, and Victor as close buds, but with time, Victor becomes the third wheel. His husband and best girl have gotten much closer, and they don't bother to hide it. He, on the other hand, has to sit through the uncomfortable shift. He watches it long enough until he decides to fade out. Victor returns to his apartment. While Roy and Alina have their hands occupied with each other, Victor has only a drink to keep him company. Time passes quickly, and before long, it's New Year's Eve of the following year. Roy, with a somber expression, packs his things, the weight of guilt heavy on his shoulders. His movements are slow and deliberate, as if each item he puts away carries the burden of the past months. Just as he zips up the bag, Victor arrives home from work, his usual energy faltering as he notices Roy's mood. Roy mentions he was waiting for Victor to get home. He's come to pick up Victor so they can both attend Alina's New Year's spread. But there's more Roy has to get off his chest. He tells Victor he proposed to Alina the previous night. Victor stares at him in utter shock even as he learns that Alina said yes. He congratulates Roy, avoiding his ex-lover's eyes. He starts fidgeting with stuff and reiterating congratulations, stating that he's happy for the new couple. Roy isn't okay with how Victor is reacting and tries to lessen the blow by offering to still come and cook for Victor now and then. He mentions they're still friends, and nothing necessarily has to change, just the paperwork, considering the looming divorce. Roy voices he still loves Victor for all it's worth, but he's found a companion in Alina. Victor tries to comfort himself with the fact that it's his two favorite people involved, and he can be happy for his two favorite people. Roy keeps trying to explain and ensure all is well, using the cheesiest and the most generic lines to do so. Victor is a bottle of overwhelming emotions he's trying hard to keep in. He still feels strongly about Roy and asks for a goodbye kiss. Roy obliges, and then Victor decides he'll skip the event. He thanks Roy and Alina for inviting him, but opts to stay indoors instead. When Roy leaves, Victor breaks down in tears. He takes off his wedding ring and lays it down in defeat. A year later, Victor is still estranged from his father. He also still has fond memories of Roy and is still an active helper at the shelter. His father put up his mother's apartment for sale, and a lawyer informs Victor that they've been a handful of interested buyers. When he's not passionately caring for the rescues alongside a colleague, Victor sticks to his old traditions. By nighttime, he finds himself wandering beneath the Christmas lights. The streets are dark and quiet, but this year, he passes the lights with far less reverence than before, barely glancing at them as if they've become nothing more than an afterthought. Victor has dozed off on the couch when he gets a call asking him to come over. He goes to Alina's place and finds her in a solemn mood while Roy tries to comfort her. Alina reminds him of his childhood, him and his mother and his strong belief in fairy tales. She's always thought she'd get a child a lot like him, but reality has put her in a fix. She and Roy can't have children because Roy is impotent. Victor asks them if they're open to adoption, and Roy answers that they've looked at the option. But they haven't just called him to give him an update on their lives. They need him for more. The couple have settled on conceiving naturally, and they're asking for Victor's help to do so. Victor can't wrap his head around the proposal, and Alina is embarrassed about the whole situation. Roy mentions it was his idea, meaning he has consented to Alina being intimate with Victor for the sake of conception. He'll be present during the process. After a thought, Victor agrees to help them out, much to Alina's delight. She confirms that he's willing to do this, and he agrees to several drinks to loosen up as the couple needs his services right away. In the bedroom, Alina and Victor admit they're in an awkward situation, but Alina and Roy have resolved to go through with the plan. So Roy pours Victor another glass and kisses him to kick off the needed mood. Roy holds Victor's hand every step of the way, giving him a reassuring smile. Victor, on the other hand, keeps his eyes on his ex-husband, pretending he's the one he's having sex with. When it's over, Roy kisses both participants, Roy, then Alina. He'd wanted a way to connect them all, and he's glad they could go through with it. Months later, Alina is heavily pregnant, and Roy is about to set out for work. They're still a happily married couple, with Roy portraying a worried father-to-be. Alina assures him that she and the baby will be fine in his absence. He kisses both her and the baby bump before setting out. Meanwhile, Victor is at work. Alina is all alone when she calls an ambulance, doing her best to choke back sobs. Victor gets a call from Roy that Alina has gone into labor. The news surprises him because Alina isn't due until the following month. He can hear Roy panicking and asks him to calm down, promising Roy that he'll be with them in the hospital soon enough. On the way to the hospital, Alina is unresponsive. The paramedics check her vitals and evaluate her, putting her on an oxygen mask. She's only 37 weeks pregnant, and the pregnancy is concluded to be high risk. She's weak and pale and suffering from excessive hemorrhaging. The paramedics rush her to the ICU, and the doctor on duty contacts a specialist. Alina struggles with both labor pain and staying conscious, and they plead with her to hang in there. The doctor relays Alina's status to the specialist, who is currently driving and on his way to the hospital. They've managed to stabilize her, but she's still hemorrhaging intensely. Roy paces the hallway, anxiously wondering where Victor could be. Moments later, Victor finally steps into view, and Roy immediately spots him. With relief, he calls out and rushes toward him, unaware of the car approaching fast. The specialist is distracted by his phone, oblivious to the danger ahead, realizing when it's already too late. Victor gets to Roy when he's still gasping for breath. The ambulance arrives when Roy is no longer breathing. Someone advises the doctor to go attend to his patient and leave the rest for the ambulance and the police. Alina delivers a baby boy she never gets to hold. She's out cold after the delivery and in need of a blood transfusion. The scene of the accident is cordoned off with yellow caution tape, now treated like a crime scene. Victor rushes into the hospital building and finds his way towards Alina's labor room. He receives terrible news in the hallway. After identifying Alina's body and briefly visiting the apartment he and Roy once shared, Victor goes to see his son, promising that they'll have each other. While he's there, the fluorescent lights start to flicker, possibly Roy making his presence known. Once upon a time, Victor had made him swear that if he ever left, he would give a sign that he was still somehow around watching and guarding.